Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to session 7 of this European Info Day dedicated to the LIFE CET program. LIFE is the EU program dedicated to the environment and climate action, and CET stands for Clean Energy Transition. So we have a dedicated call for proposals dedicated to this sub-program. You have already heard from our colleagues the general aspects of this call, and you are here in session 7, where we will be discussing about heating and cooling, and we will be presenting the novelties coming from the legislation as background to the presentation of the two call for proposals, so the two topics open this year under heating and cooling, one dedicated to district heating and cooling, and the second dedicated specifically to heat pumps. So we have the opportunity today, and maybe I can ask colleagues to share the agenda, please. We have today two colleagues coming from DG Energy, plus I will be also be accompanied by my colleague Piotr Weiss, who is going to give a presentation about the district heating and cooling topic. And today you will have the opportunity to engage with us, speakers, to ask questions. And how can you do that? You can do it through Slido. If you're not familiar with Slido, please visit www.slido.com. The hashtag to enter the surveys is EU Life 23. So I repeat, EU Life 23. And then you will have access to a number of sessions. Please check the session number 7. There you can check the questions which have already been posted by other participants, and you can vote those which are more of interest for you, or you can post your own questions. So this session is going to be recorded and will be available. So we'll have also some users watching us after this meeting. In that case, you can refer to the frequently asked questions session under the European Commission's funding and tender portal, where you will find all the answers to the questions asked today. And if you have more, please do not hesitate to contact us. We will publish more answers to questions as we receive them to guide all of the possible applicants in a transparent manner. We will publish all of them. So without further ado, I'm very pleased to give the floor to Madis Laniste and Mathieu Vallieu from DG Energy, who are going to give us the background and the novelties about the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Directive related to heating and cooling. Colleagues, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Luca, and good afternoon to everyone. So I'm glad to start this presentation about the policy context of this call and particular priorities. And next slide, please. So the Energy Efficiency Directive is in the final stages of the revision, and this revision also addresses the elements that are on the heating and cooling supply in the directive, and these are closely linked with the provisions that are related to the district heating. And the current Energy Efficiency Directive doesn't promote sufficiently decarbonization of the heating and cooling systems, and therefore the relevant definitions and the provisions of the Energy Efficiency Directive are revised. With the new Energy Efficiency Directive, we are trying to figure out what's or trying to establish the pathway to decarbonize the district heating and cooling systems. And for this purpose, the definition of the efficient district heating and cooling is revised. And we hope that this will lead to higher use of renewables, higher system integration and use of the waste heat in the district heating and cooling systems. Also, higher application of the high efficiency cogeneration in district heating and cooling. And this altogether, these provisions are hopefully leading to and facilitating conversion to district heating systems into low temperature systems. So this revision of the definition of efficient district heating and cooling is going to take place gradually throughout the years in next decades. And next slide, please. And there is put forward a clear pathway how the system that can be defined as efficient district heating and cooling system should change in the coming decades. And as you can see, the share of the renewables should increase in those systems. The share of waste heat is on equal footing with the renewable energy, and also there is a role of high efficiency cogeneration in the efficient district heating systems and cooling systems. And there is a requirement also introduced that says that a certain part of the heating supply should come from the renewables or waste heat. And the overall objective of this provision is to ensure that in year 2050, all the heat originates from the renewable energy and waste heat in the efficient district heating and cooling systems. Next slide, please. And there is also alternative definition put in place in the directive, and this is based on the greenhouse gas emissions per unit of heat and cold supplied to the customers. And as you can see, also there is a gradual schedule for the decreasing of the greenhouse gases of the district heating systems. So these are the most essential provisions of the Energy Efficiency Directive that should be respected. There is a requirement that all the district heating system owners and operators should ensure that systems are having the plans to convert the existing systems into efficient district heating and cooling systems. And this is the core of the Energy Efficiency Directive. I give now the floor to my colleague Matthew. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Madis. Indeed, I will talk about the Renewable Energy Directive, which combines usefully with the EED. There is here, again, a provisional agreement on the new directive, where there will be new requirements, not system by system, but for member states. The first element is that member states will have a higher target for an indicative increase of the share of renewables in their stock of district heating overall, to really indicate that district heating has an important contribution to play to the overall decarbonization of heating and cooling. And there are specific requirements in addition to the increased target, especially as regards energy system integration. The first aspect I want to mention is on the use of waste heat and cold, where member states now must put in place a coordination framework between the district heating and cooling system operators and potential sources of waste heat and cold in the industrial or tertiary sectors to facilitate the use of waste heat and cold, which will also contribute to helping this gradual improvement that Madis described. And that coordination framework at national level is there to ensure dialogue between district heating operators, the industry generating waste heat and cold, but also local authorities responsible for planning. The other important element is reinforcement of the requirements about the coordination with the electricity system. Because now member states will have to establish a framework under which electricity DSOs, district system operators, will assess, in cooperation with the district heating operators, the potential for district heating to provide system services, balancing services, storage, and other system services. And the previous directive stopped there, but now under the new requirements, member states also have to ensure that transmission and distribution system operators take account of the results of that assessment and use it in grid planning, in grid investment, in infrastructure development. So there's a clear mandate and requirement now that the potential of district heating is actually used in planning and infrastructure development. And in addition to that, member states also have to facilitate coordination between district heating and electricity system operators to ensure that services provided by district heating can participate in the electricity markets. So this is also a new requirement. Additionally, there is an option for member states to go even beyond that and extend those coordination requirements to gas transmission and distribution system operators. Next slide, please. Next, I would like to quickly jump into the other topic, which is heat pumps. Just to stress the importance of heat pumps under the Repower EU plan, where we aim to make the EU independent from Russian fossil fuel imports by 2030. And heat pumps are essential in this plan. They're essential there, and they are essential in our heating and cooling strategy, because now we have assessed that more than 20 million old individual heating appliances will need to replace in the previous year and risk being replaced by fossil boilers without accelerated action. So the Repower EU plan translates into an objective to install at least 10 million additional heat pumps by 2027. And in addition, with the phase out of standalone boilers by 2029, which is proposed under eco-design rules, a total additional deployment of 30 million or more heat pumps by 2030 can be expected as compared to 2020, most of them hydronic, including hybrid heat pumps. So these are really considerable numbers. There are a number of barriers, structural, related to infrastructure and systems, high upfront costs, etc., information barriers, various market failures, insufficient product standards and labels, industry and value chain limitations, skill gaps, etc. So these are addressed across new legislation or ongoing legislation. Next slide, please. And other barriers related to skills and certifications are addressed, for instance, under the Renewable Energy Directive, where member states, for instance, need to set up new frameworks for training, for certification of installers, take measures to address gaps, etc. We are also working with the industry directly on partnership for skills. So a number of actions are being taken in place to ensure that acceleration. I will stop here. Thanks a lot, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, both Madis and Mathieu. The presentation is very, very, very important and useful, and it will pave the way for two more detailed presentations about the topics open and the call for proposals. So for those who have joined us later, you are listening to session 7 of the European Info Day dedicated to LIFE Clean Energy Transition Call 2023, and this is the session dedicated to district heating and cooling and heat pumps. Now we have a presentation from my colleague Piotr Weiss, who is going to introduce to you the topic open for supporting the fuel switch and the modernization of district heating and cooling. Piotr, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Luca. Thank you, Madis and Matthew, for the introduction and presentation of the current work on the policy. You underlined some aspects, especially efficient district heating systems, energy system integration, renewables, waste heat, and exactly those aspects are very relevant to the topic that I intend to focus on. And let's start the second part of the meeting. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Piotr Weiss. I'm a project advisor in SINEA in the LIFE Energy Unit. And this afternoon, I'm going to talk about LIFE 2023 Clean Energy Transition topic. The title is here, Enabling Modernization and Fuel Switch through support for investment plans and skills development. Here, there are few very important issues that I would like to underline at the beginning, and we would like to talk about investment plans. This is the scope A, for instance, you can see later on, and skills development. And the aim of my presentation is to explain the main points of the topic and give you some additional remarks. I hope that it will be useful and it will help you to develop very good proposals at the end. Next slide, please. I divided my presentation into few parts. Firstly, I would like to mention on topic objectives, exactly what was also written in the topic description. Then I'm going to deal with the topic scopes. And this will be a longer part of my presentation because I have also 2 scopes, as I mentioned. And after that, I will present expected impacts, also a very important part. And finally, there will be also a time for questions. You can also take note and use Slido to put the question, and we will discuss this question after the second presentation of my colleague. Next slide, please. Let's start with the first point here, objectives. Still, very often, fossil fuels are the main source of energy in district heating and cooling systems. As you know, it's very common that we still use coal or gas, for instance, and probably I don't need to convince you that renewable heating and cooling systems should be rolled out faster if we really want to reach decarbonization targets. Some of the work was already done. For instance, guidance, recommendations, and technical advisory services have already been developed and tested. At the national and local levels, we have had, or still we have, some projects that are going in this direction and work on this. However, there is still a room for improvement. And it was noted that the application of renewable energy sources for heating and cooling is limited by different factors. For instance, limited human, technical, and financial capacities of network owners, operators. And technical support are needed to help district heating companies in our whole sector to prepare modernization and development projects. And exactly our intention is to help countries overcome some of these identified barriers in district heating and cooling sectors and reach targets also presented by my colleagues here. Next slide, please. Now I am moving to the scope of the topic. I mentioned about objectives, but exactly if we would like to reach these objectives, it's necessary to further support efficient and renewable technologies, application of efficient and renewable technologies. And this is particularly demanding for existing district heating systems. So proposals are expected to focus on one of the 2 scopes below. The scope addressed should be specified in the introduction of the proposal. As you can see, it's important mention what is the scope of the proposal at the beginning and focus on one of these 2 scopes. Scope A, technical support for the development of investment plans, for the modernization, fuel switch, and system integration of existing district heating systems. And here you should focus on the investment plans, development of these plans, working together with the district heating operators owners, and scope B, skills development of professionals, operators, and public authorities. And here we would like you to focus on skills, development of the skills. Please, next slide. And I start with scope A. The aim is to work with operators, owners of existing district heating networks and provide them with the required technical support for the preparation of investment plans to integrate low temperature heat sources or waste heat and fulfill the proposed criteria for efficient district heating and cooling. These criteria are defined in the revised Energy Efficiency Directive, were also presented by MADIS, and these criteria should be reached within a time of 10 years after the project end. I would like to also underline that investment plans should include the detailed identification of the investments, their timing, the internal and external resources required, the public and private funding sources, and other elements. It's up to you, consortia, that should also mention here what exactly should be included in these investment plans. In that scope, the proposal should also identify solid ways to modernize the systems and to integrate low temperature renewable energy or waste heat in the system. And also here one remark, transformation into low temperature district heating networks is not compulsory. Depends on your approach, your proposal that you would like also to share with us and explain the whole activity that you have in mind. Also, proposals should support the development of a substantial number of investment plans and in at least 3 eligible countries. As you can see here, substantial numbers, what it means is not precisely described, depends also on your activity, your budget, the whole action that you would like also to present in your proposal. Next slide, please. More information about Scope A. Additionally, activities should, then it should be also included in the proposal, include financial planning and pre-feasibility studies, demonstrate the interest, commitment of the district heating operators receiving support, explain the content of the support and how the consortium will deliver this support on the ground. And here, the idea is to have these details on plan work in the proposal. This work should be explained and also better substantiated in your proposal that you would like also to submit to the Commission. And activities should also promote replication by other district heating operators owners and can provide, where relevant, the assessment of the compatibility with the existing building stock or options to link district heating retrofitting to local building renovation plans, the assessment of the potential to participate in electricity markets by providing balancing, storage, and other flexibility services. And in this presentation, you can see 2 main elements. The first part starts with activities should, then this is, let's say, obligatory to have all these elements in your proposal. And the second part, you can also provide this information where, of course, it's relevant and you would like also to focus on this and elaborate a bit more. What is important, proposals under this topic are not expected to finance the development of new tools. For instance, softwares that should also help me to create business plans. It was just already done. You can use existing tools or other methods, Excel, for instance, sheet, it's up to you. But exactly, we would like not to focus and invest in the software, new software, for instance, development for creation of the investment plans. Next slide, please. There was a short information about Scope A. Now, regarding Scope B, the second scope of the topic, as I said at the beginning, there are 2 scopes, and the proposal should address one of those 2 scopes. And in Scope B, proposals should increase the capacity of targeted professionals across the district heating and cooling value chain, including white-collar workers or civil servants at different levels in national, regional, or local authorities. And here, you are asked to focus on skills. So proposals should provide the technical and practical knowledge how to develop new district heating or cooling system based on low temperature renewable energy sources and waste heat, modernize and integrate low-grade renewable energy and waste heat sources into existing systems, operate district heating networks at low temperatures. Then still we are talking about integration of renewable energy sources, modernization of the existing district heating, and further operational aspects in district heating networks. Next slide, please. Yes, further aspects are listed at this slide, and proposals should provide details on the actual scope and content of the training and capacity building activities to be developed. For instance, professional profiles and levels in the European qualification framework targeted, thematic coverage, duration of the training, validation mechanism. Also include the training of trainers and the testing and validation phase for the new or upgraded schemes developed. And here, a key element should be the development of the strategy, ensuring that the schemes will be sustained after the end of the project, linking to available sources of funding at national and EU level. Here, there's also a remark that exactly the money that are also dedicated for your activity here in this topic are not for this purpose, for long-term running of the training schemes after the end of the project. Where relevant, applicants should aim to bring together employers, trade unions, as well as training providers. It's up to you to exactly create this consortium based on your also activity. And next slide, please. And proposals can cover one or more different aspects. For instance, development, testing, and validation phase of new schemes, or upgrade and replication of existing training schemes, development or upgrade and dissemination of technical guidance, capacity building for deploying renewable and efficient district heating and cooling networks. And this is an example. It's also up to you to focus on one of these elements, more elements that are listed here, or also add other aspects that you think are very relevant and can be also easily explained and supported by some evidence. Next slide, please. The proposed actions are expected to be built on the lessons learned and material developed from previous projects and other programs, be based on concrete successful examples, be tailored to local contexts, enable peer-to-peer learning, and be carried out where applicable, of course, through the use of existing software and tools. Next slide, please. Now I would like to say a few sentences about common requirements for both scopes, Scope A and Scope B, and proposals must be submitted by at least 3 applicants, beneficiaries, from 3 different eligible countries. And the contribution expected from the EU dedicated for Scope A is 1.75 million. Of course, consortium can request other amount. Then, of course, this request should be supported by the calculation, explanation why, for instance, you need more money or less money. And for Scope B, the contribution is 1.5 million expected. Consortium can also request other amounts. Next slide, please. Yes, let's move to the next part of my talk, to impacts. They are linked to the topic objectives, of course, and scopes. And here you have general information on impacts. Proposals should demonstrate how project results will contribute to expected impacts and quantify impacts using the provided topic-specific indicators. Then the second group of indicators are actively specified indicators by the partners itself and related to the planned activities. You can also add your additional indicators here. and also address impacts related to common indicators for the LIFE CET subprogram. There are also common indicators that you will be asked to fulfill later on related to the exactly LIFE CET subprogram, common for all topics and the whole call. Impacts should be quantified for project duration and for 5 years after the end of the project. And proposals should present the starting point and underlying assumptions with credible data and calculation methods, and also establish clear links between activity and impacts. And still, you should also present in your proposal how you would like to reach this impact, this number that also you would like to present, giving also your assumptions and based on the credible data that also experts, evaluators later on can verify that exactly the presented impacts could be reached at the end of the project or 5 years after the end of the project. Next slide, please. Because there are 2 scopes in this topic description, the topic-specific impacts will be presented separately because they are not exactly the same. At this slide, the impacts are presented for scope A, and we have here number of existing district heating systems equipped with an investment plan, allowing them to fulfill the criteria for efficient district heating and cooling, as it was also defined in the Energy Efficiency Directive. Then we have also number of local and regional authorities integrating the outcomes of the project in their energy planning, as well investments in energy efficiency and renewable energy sources triggered by the implementation of your project or the investment plans developed thanks to the project. Next slide, please. And for scope B, still I'm talking about topic-specific impacts. And you have number of training schemes and capacity building activities developed by the project, number of trainers trained, because one of the requirements here was training of the trainers, number of professionals and civil servants trained, number of operators with strengthened capacity, number of stakeholders and organizations endorsing technical guidelines, number of local, regional, or national regulatory frameworks strengthened. Still, here we are talking about skills, and we can verify your impact exactly looking also at this number. Next slide, please. Yes, and here a more general impacts related to the LIFE Clean Energy Transition Program, investments in sustainable energy triggered by the project, primary energy savings triggered by the project, renewable energy generation triggered by the project, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, and there are very general here indications, impacts that are required by CET program for all topics that we have. And next slide, please. Yes, I would like to terminate with additional information about the topic. The whole topic description is available on the Founding and Tender Opportunities portal. And exactly, I prepared my presentation based on the topic description, the text. In major part, I copied and put the text here, not to change also the wording, for instance, and give you some additional explanations. There you can also find all documents that are very useful for preparation of the proposal, guidance, templates, for instance. Link is given here on the slide. You can also search it. You should go under the Program for the Environment and Climate Action, LIFE, then find calls for the proposals and tenders, then select topic. You can also search. If you remember, for instance, few words of the topic description, you can also copy this and then search, and you can also find all this information. If you have questions related to the topic, please use also Slido right now. You have also possibility to send them to the presented address, CINEA LIFE CET @EC-Europa-EU, and we will answer you, and we will also publish this answer in the portal exactly for other also audience. Next slide, please. Yes, this is the end of my presentation right now. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, please use Slido, as I said. Please take a note, and we will have a common question session after the presentation of my colleague. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your extensive presentation. Before passing on to the second topic dedicated to heat pumps, I think it's worth stressing for those who will be working on proposals for district heating and cooling is that while Scope A is really focusing on transformation of existing systems and to support them towards the transition to renewables and waste heat, the topic B, skills development, is open also for new systems or areas where no district heating and cooling are currently operating, but they are under planning. And here I also underline the word cooling because we're also open for proposals dedicated to district cooling, new district cooling systems under Scope B. Thanks again to Piotr, and I have now some time for the presentation of the second topic on heat pumps, whose title is Boosting Heat Pump Deployment Through Alternative Models. And here we mean both business and delivery models and skilled installers. And I prepared this presentation together with my colleague Stamatis Sivitos. The next slide, please. Also under heat pumps, we have two scopes. The first is focusing on supporting the deployment of heat pumps, high quality heat pumps, through alternative business and delivery models. And the Scope B is really addressing one of the main barriers, which was highlighted by my colleague Mathieu earlier on, related to the shortage of skilled installers and professionals for heat pumps in many markets. Important notes for you before digging into the details is that proposals should address only one of these two scopes. The scope address should be clearly specified in the introduction. That should be very, very clear. And here we expect proposals to be submitted by at least 3 applicants, not beneficiaries, so only beneficiaries, not affiliated entities, from 3 different eligible countries, being the 27 EU member states, plus Moldova, plus Iceland, plus Ukraine. The next slide, please. So we go into the details of Scope A, alternative business and delivery models. The next slide, please. Here, what we expect, the indicative contribution by the EU is estimated around 1,750,000 euros per project. And of course, this is indicative. As for district heating and cooling, applicants may propose a different budget. This must be duly justified. So what we expect here is really proposals, actions addressing and tackling market barriers, and demonstrate, upscale, or replicate innovative alternative business or delivery models. These may include, but are not limited, these are just examples: heat as a service, pay for performance, joint procurement actions. These are just examples. It's not prescriptive. It's not mandatory to cover any of them. Through these actions are expected to stimulate large-scale demand for heat pumps in existing buildings. Let me highlight here and stress the keyword existing buildings, especially as part of building renovation projects, to reduce significantly the investment costs, so thereby addressing one of the main barriers, which is the high upfront costs of heat pumps, and while ensuring high quality of the installations. Again, keywords being high quality. The next slide, please. In doing so, the proposals should ensure the following. First of all, that the buildings selected are suitable and ready for the installation of heat pumps prior to any sort of installation, that the building heating needs and the size of the heat pumps are properly assessed. And again, I stress here that the installation must be of the highest possible quality. To that end, proposals may apply tools, methods, if you have innovative methods, which can simplify those processes and those assessments. The next slide, please. Next slide. Back off this, please. Thank you very much. So what is the focus of the action? We expect as a minimum that the service provided by those heat pumps cover space heating needs. This doesn't mean that this is the only service covered. We can be open to, for example, reversible heat pumps covering also space cooling needs and domestic hot water. But as a minimum, we expect space heating to be covered. And proposals can address any segment of the building stock. However, we encourage very much two segments, multi-apartment and commercial buildings, to be covered. In that framework, applicants may also explore and address synergies between heat pumps with PV systems, for example, hybrid renewable heating and cooling systems, for example, with bioenergy or solar thermal collectors. These can also be promoted, but it's not a must. The next slide, please. Further requirements here depicted on this slide, listed on this slide. Heat pumps must be designed and installed by qualified professionals with relevant skills and qualifications. All the relevant stakeholders must be, as much as possible, included, part of the action. Whether they are not included directly, they can be involved, for example, through advisory boards or demonstrate their interest through letters of support. That's very important. And then the proposed actions are also invited to not to reinvent the wheel, of course, but as much as possible to build on previous experience, lessons learned from other relevant projects and programs, both within LIFE, Horizon 2020, European, but also national programs and projects. Next slide, please. We go back to impacts. This slide was already presented by my colleague Piotr. For district heating and cooling, you have topic-specific, activity-specific, and common indicators. I won't go into the detail, but please bear this in mind. In the next slide, I'm going to present what are the specific indicators for Scope A. Please, the next slide. What are the expected impacts and indicators for this scope? You can read here the number of new installations which are triggered by the action, including measures to ensure the quality, and again, I insist on the quality of the installation and the performance for end users, the number of users and stakeholders benefiting from those established models put in place during the action. We also are going to gauge the commitments, the number of commitments for the replication of those alternative models up to 5 years until the end of the action. And then we will also have some more common LIFE CET indicators, the investment in sustainable energy triggered by the action, the primary energy savings triggered, the renewable energy generation, and the greenhouse gas emissions saved during the project at the end of the action. The next slide, please. I'm going now to spend some time on Scope B, which is really addressing one of the market barriers, which I mentioned, which is the shortage of professionals for heat pumps. And this is going to be done in the framework, and the next slide, please, of a broader initiative, which is called Build Up Skills, and for which we also have one dedicated topic open. So I invite you also to check that specific text and the recordings available from the presentation. However, this year we have a specific scope dedicated to heat pumps, which is promoted and published in isolation. What is Build Up Skills all about? It is an initiative launched by the Commission back in 2011 with the objective to support the upskilling of professionals in the building sector, with an initial focus on blue-collar workers. The first actions aim to establish national platforms with key stakeholders working together to analyze the gaps available at the time up to 2020, so to achieve the energy and climate objectives up to 2020 and make the workforce in line with those objectives. We managed to have 30 national platforms and 30 roadmaps established and endorsed at the time, based on which, as a Commission, we funded a number of projects focusing first on the national level, training and qualification, and then under Horizon 2020, focusing on transnational aspects, so bringing together stakeholders working from different countries, and again working on new innovative training and qualification schemes and learning methods. Later on, we also focused a little bit more on how to boost, on actions to boost the demand for skills and skilled professionals in the building sector, including heat pumps, heating and cooling and heat pumps. And we have a number of examples of projects already covering heat pumps. Why I'm sharing with you this information is because we encourage, while working on your proposal, to check what is already available, what is already done in the framework of Build Up Skills, and of course, under different programs and different projects at the EU and the national level. Next slide, please. The next slide again. Thank you very much. So what is this scope B all about? Here we expect really proposals, actions increasing significantly the number of skilled professionals in the heat pump sector, thereby reducing the growing shortage in certain markets. I already mentioned the importance not to reinvent the wheel, but rather to build, complement existing current or past actions. So this is a very important recommendation I'd like to state again. Next slide, please. So how this should be done? Proposals are expected to carry out one or more of the following activities. Identify profiles and set up actions to attract and reskill professionals from other sectors. So here the keyword is reskill professionals from other sectors with skills which are possibly transferable to the heat pump sector. Second possible action, identify and quantify skills and workforce gaps at different levels, local, regional, national, or you can build on existing solid gap analysis to set up actions. These are just examples, new or upgraded training and qualification schemes. To do what? To incentivize and facilitate the upskilling of the workforce, installers, but not exclusively installers, strengthen the skills for professionals to integrate heat pumps as part of building renovation projects. And of course, skills for integrated systems and solutions, for example, heat pumps combined photovoltaics. A further action which can be addressed is support cooperation between key stakeholders, for example, key trades, national associations, other relevant stakeholders to do what? To develop, to test, and to disseminate widely agreed, and this is the keyword, widely agreed EU-wide competencies, content guidelines for specialized training, and core training material, which can be tested in certain contexts, replicated, and possibly replicated elsewhere, and can be adaptable to the different local contexts. The last possible area of action is the support to set up state-of-the-art training facilities for heat pump installers. And let me stress here that in line with the general rules of the LIFE CET sub-program, we do not cover costs for infrastructure and equipment. The next slide, please. Some further indications, especially for when it comes to activities. We do not fund long-term activities, but rather the first innovation and the first steps. So what is very important for proposals is to already plan to address the actual and long-term running of the activities within the scope. So a very important element is this that we expect. For example, linking the European and the national sources available for the long-term running of the operations. When it comes to training in particular, we expect train-the-trainer activities, specifically because we cannot fund massive training courses needed to really fill those gaps, but we want to finance the first steps. So train-the-trainer is one of those activities we expect. And we also expect the details on the actual scope, on the content of the training to be developed, and you here have more details of what we expect in the proposal, at the proposal stage already. Next slide, please. Again, we have a number of common indicators and topic-specific indicators. You might already be familiar with this slide, so I'm going to share in the next slide, please, what are the specific indicators for Scope B. And these are the number of training schemes, actions, which are developed or upgraded or replicated to support both the reskilling or the upskilling of professionals based on existing or developed high-quality gap analysis, the number of professionals trained, the number of trainers trained, and the number of stakeholders and organizations which endorse the EU-wide material competencies guidelines developed within the action. So what we want is really outputs which are widely agreed and reflect the interest at a large scale of the parties involved in the sector. And on top of that, we also have, for the scope, as for the others, a number of common indicators which you need to fill in terms of investments in sustainable energy, primary energy savings, renewable energy generation, and reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. The next slide, please. I'll stop there for the moment. You have, as for the other topics, the topic text, which is the source, which is legally binding, where you can find all the information, including for those watching us after this meeting through the recordings. You will have the answers to the questions we're going to reply today, and those which we're going to receive in the coming days. So without any further ado, I will just stop there and open the floor for questions. And I kindly ask the back office to share the questions we have received so far. Thank you very much. So we have received 3 questions, and 2 are on district heating, I see. So I'm going to read them out, and Piotr will provide some answers, and we will, of course, publish the answers also on the Commission's funding and tender portal. Are equipment costs eligible for the district heating and cooling topic? And again, should companies already select and describe should proposals already select and describe the owners or the operators which are going to be addressed under that topic? So Piotr, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Luca. Similar to what you also mentioned in your topic, the equipment cost is not eligible here. We don't finance the equipment, but service and activities that can trigger investments. And the purpose of this topic is to have investment plans before the end of the project. And consortium should also ensure that plans are ready to be implemented during the project lifetime or at the end of the project. But we don't have money exactly for investments here. As you know, the budget is 1.75 million. You need to work in at least 3 countries. Then exactly there's no money for investments here.
Thank you very much. You have a second question?
Yes, about selected and companies. Here I also presented one sentence in my slide. there was written that activities should demonstrate the interest, commitment of the district heating operators receiving support. Then this is written also in the text of the topic description, and it will be up to consortium, to proposers, to convince also evaluators, experts, that the planned activities are based on solid foundations. And exactly, there is a cooperation between the consortium, for instance, and district heating operators owners, rather than assumptions that I will have these good relations between consortium and district heating operators. This is also very important later on for the evaluation of the project, because it seems then, if this relation is very good, that the project can be also implemented and can reach expected impacts. How can it be done? Depends also on the consortium. There are also different possibilities, starting from letter of support, for instance, letter of intent, introducing also district heating operators as a beneficiaries. It's up to you exactly to take proper way and demonstrate in your proposal why you choose this method and what will be reached at the end.
Thank you, Piotr. So we are left with one question, and this is on HEATPUMPS. And I read it out. Heat pump topic text, scope A. Is it mandatory to cover one or more of the mentioned 3 models? Is there an advantage to cover multiple models? So let me maybe first start by reading what the 3 models are, so that everyone is on the same page. It's under scope A, alternative business and delivery models. Here we mentioned that proposals should really address market barriers to reduce front costs while maintaining a very high quality. And this can be done through the development or replication or testing or replication of a number of business or delivery models. And we list, just as a matter of example, 3 of them: heat as a service, pay for performance, and joint procurement actions. So let me stress that these are just examples. You don't have to necessarily to cover them. We don't want to be prescriptive. We want to leave to the market and to the specific context to come up with those models which are the most promising and right for the specific context. So these are just there as examples. And of course, there is not an obligation to cover all of them. There is not any advantage to cover multiple models. So it really depends, and this must be duly justified, why one specific innovative or alternative model is proposed, what's the background, why it should be effective to achieve the objectives. But this, again, it depends very much on the specific context. So you can explore models which are not listed as examples, or you can cover 1 or 2, depending very much on specific needs, and these needs to be justified properly. Again, you can cover 2, you can cover 3 new alternative methods, but the advice is really to focus on the specific needs and to go into the detail of what you're proposing. So I hope this will help. I cannot see more questions, and we have reached already the time available. And let me just stress 3 things. We discussed today the novelties for heating and cooling stemming from the revised Renewable Energy Directive and Energy Efficiency Directive as background to 2 topics open, 2 calls for proposal open, aiming really to either to support the implementation of specific provisions, like is the case for district heating and cooling, or rather to complement what is already available and what is upcoming on the European, on the national, and on the regional level supporting the deployment of heat pumps. We have some budget available. We look very much forward to your proposals. This meeting, this session is being recorded, and the recording will be soon available on the website of CINEA. For those who are watching those recordings, we encourage you to refer to the dedicated section under the Commission's funding and tender portal, where you can find the answers to the questions received today and those which we're going to receive in the coming days. So if you're watching this, or if you have any more questions following the discussion today, please do not hesitate to email us. The email address is cinea-life-cet@ec.europa.eu. So if you have any doubts, please do not hesitate to contact us. The answers to those questions will be published and available for everyone to ensure a fair treatment to all of you. So we look very much forward. Thank you, Piotr, for your contribution. Thanks again to our colleagues from DG Energy. And again, thanks for watching us, and we look forward to your proposal. Good luck, and thank you.
Thank you also from my side. Good luck.